Good afternoon, everybody. This is a interesting development. I was at a local bookstore here called the Yellow Dog. They sell used books and lots of used books, lots of all different kinds of used books. And they have a little tiny martial arts section, not very many, but really cool book showed up and I had to buy it. This is the Taekwondo. I called it the Encyclopedia of Taekwondo by Richard Chun. Richard Chun taught in New York State. I think one of his most famous students was Gregory Hines, a famous dancer and actor. He was in a really popular movie in the 80s called White Nights. Um, and he was, known for his ballet and his tap and all that stuff. But he was a legit black belt with Richard Chun. So the original book was published in 1976 for a price of $55, which, especially in 1976, that would be like buying a over $100 book. Very, very expensive for the time, a luxury. So as a kid, I would see this available in bookstores, and I don't know what edition, but I couldn't afford it. But I would just look at it, and I thought the photography was cool. And I hadn't actually yet formally studied Taekwondo then, but I'm going to look at the publication date here. It says 1976. So it's a first edition. And, this actually has the original outside cover as well as the hardcover. And as I'm looking through this book in detail now, it's pretty cool. It's got all the basics, it's got Palgui forms, and sections on board breaking and lots of spectacular pictures of high flying kicks and double front kick, split kick, breaking boards by people standing on chairs, all kinds of cool stuff. And then I went to the Hoshin Sul, the self defense section, and ran across a gem. So remember, this is 1976, right? Um, so I'm going to show you a few pictures. First of all, about halfway through self defense, there's a young lady demonstrating break falls and throws. And when we get to the self defense part, I think, again, more break falls, more throws. For example, here's her doing in her street clothes, attractive young lady, beautiful long hair, throwing one of her instructors around, throwing Master Chun around, actually. And that was cool. And then we get to the women's self defense, and I was like, this is really cool because here she demonstrates guard position. I hope you can see, right? She's got a person actually in the guard and she's tiger mouthing the throat. And then she moves on into a knee screen and a basic armbar because a lot of those Taekwondo pioneers, they also studied Judo, which is basically Korean Judo, right? And this maneuver with the legs it's almost an umaplata, almost, right? And one more. This is almost like a triangle. It's more of a head scissors, but it's almost like a triangle, right? And then we have some very, very basic responses to being grabbed and punched and kicked, and even, uh, you know, like this, for instance, this armbar, this standing armbar, taught in Gracie Jiu Jitsu. We practice that, right? Although, along with the throws and grappling, she integrates punches and kicks and pokes to the eye and things, really stabs to the eye. There's this tendency that people that don't actually practice these techniques like to denigrate them by giving them funny names that make them sound ineffective, like poked him in the eye. I'm like, no, it's a stab to the eye, it's a thrust to the eye, it's a finger thrust, it's a spear hand, it's a different thing, right? So I just thought that was really cool because some of the younger martial artists I encountered, they're like, well, Taekwondo doesn't work. These old arts, they're real limited. They don't have any grappling, yada yada. But I mean, it's here in this gigantic encyclopedia in 1976, right? And I am very happy with this purchase. $10. I paid $10 for a book that originally sold for $55. It would be an expensive book now if it was brand new and sold at $55, right? And also, I don't know if Master Chun is still alive, but this is a legacy. He's younger. This is in his younger days, and there's a lot of footage of him executing a lot of great jump kicks and things. So Taekwondo is a martial art where some of the techniques have a half life. If you're you know my age, older, if you're even in your late 30s, a lot of the jumps, for example, just become difficult to do and land and everything. So it's great watching him do all these really well photographed jump kicks and things. So yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that I was very proud of this. $10. $10. Can't beat it. Can't beat it. Love used bookstores. That was an old kind of a pulp fiction, science fiction book there for 92 cents. So I can't really beat that. Yes, I understand it's COVID and do you want to buy something used? I mean, ultimately, I've gotten my vaccines and we have to move on with our lives. So yes, eventually we have to start shopping at thrift stores again, Preferably you take care of your health, wash your hands, you know, get your vaccine when it's available and do what you can. Brief other thing I just want to note to sort of tag on to the end of this video is, I saw the what footage I could find of that kung fu grandma, I call her. This young man, young white guy, was walking around Chinatown beating up Asian elders. I think first he beat up an 83-year-old man or a man in his 80s, and then an hour later decided to beat up this old Asian grandma, and he just walked up and punched her dead in her face. And she picked up a board, stick, something that was lying around, and pounded him, and he wound up on a stretcher. And I also wonder if he's on that stretcher, if he's just kind of faking. He looked like his wrist was screwed up and he had this shocked look on his face and there was blood coming out of his face. But I wonder if he was kind of hamming it up for the cameras for sympathy because instead of arresting him, they put him in a stretcher and took him to an ambulance. So, yeah, Kung Fu Grandma, great. You go for it. Fight back. Fight back. I'm pretty sure she had some kung fu training in her youth and probably some more traditional training. Um, that's another thing I think us kung fu practitioners need to be aware of is that because we're involved in something that's Asian, this may come to us. People may begin discriminating against us and accusing us of being, I don't know, communists or whatever, chink lovers, whatever. It's not a good day in America um, for anybody that's not lily white, right? Now, I'm concerned that this is going to affect the kung fu community in two ways, right? I think that if there are any Chinese teachers out there who are teaching the traditional, effective, practical kung fu, that this may cause them to retreat back into the secrecy where you don't teach your non-Chinese students um, everything. You withhold reverse racism, right? Which that's no good either. But if you know the history of the Chinese people in this country, I mean, I, I'm shocked that there have been Chinese kung fu teachers in this country that didn't withhold their knowledge, all of their knowledge, from their non-Chinese students, because there were many that gave that knowledge out freely, right? I'm surprised that all Chinese haven't done that, and you know, um, or just decided to only teach Chinese. I think Bruce Lee had a big role in that. He popularized kung fu. He made it financially lucrative, and yes, a lot of teachers did teach their Chinese and non-Chinese differently or didn't disclose everything and didn't let them know that everything hadn't been disclosed. But I also think law of averages, there will always be one that's sympathetic. For instance, they may have fought on the nationalist side against the communists and, against the Japanese and so perceived us as allies. That's one thing. The other thing is that, well, like I said, there may be a rebound effect on us, right? And I actually contacted a local Chinese language school and I said, would you like, because of the increasing violence on Asian Americans, would you like to hold and organize a self defense class and possibly a traditional Chinese Kung Fu class? Because, and I said, this is, traditional effective Kung Fu that I would be teaching, not sport Wusu. And they may not be conducive to that. There's a lot of mainlanders here, and the mainlanders are probably taught that this traditional kung fu is bad, right? So we'll see, but maybe if you are a kung fu teacher and you do know the practical applications of your art, this might be a good time to reach out to the Asian community and say, would you like classes or a class or a seminar for your people? And I also say, be compensated for it. Yes, you can volunteer, do it for free, but this is a good time to let them know that there are business opportunities for them. They can charge, you get a portion, they get a portion. It's something that could benefit that community and you and the wide community. And I think ultimately, if you teach a practical, effective, useful style of kung fu, and many people say it doesn't exist, and you teach it to Asians, you're sort of giving the gift back to them from whatever lineage you got it from, and also make sure that the class is open to non-Asians so that you can build and foster good relations among people. People that are of different races and religions, and try to build more unity in the country via martial arts, rather than this being yet another thing that separates us into angry factions, right? So just something to think about. I hope you guys. It's a Sunday. It's a beautiful day. My normal Sunday student, she's on a trip, so I have this day off, and really just hanging at home, watching some documentaries about Bruce Lee and old detective shows, and reading some sci-fi and just chilling out. So hope you guys are having a good weekend, and let's take care of each other. It's a little crazy out there.